so it's okay.
I think I'll stick to Pete, right?
Okay.
And we're talking about discovering how to deal with the media and how you can use the media to promote yourself, promote your brand, promote your business, the right things to do it, the little things that get in the way, and how to overcome all these fears. I remember when we were preparing for this, we mentioned about a simple sentence that one of your ex-clients or someone you coached really, really struggled with. And it's a very senior person. And so this kind of just will help anybody, the things, it's only me. As I said, I went on there thinking, I can't do this. And I know I'm not alone. Would you mind sharing that with us just to help us kind of just put everything in perspective?
Yeah, sure. I also in my career have made some corporate films, and I've directed films for the likes of BP and also M&S, which for the non-UK listeners out there is a sort of slightly upmarket sort of supermarket known for selling good food and maybe ladies' underwear. That's the other thing it's very, very famous for. But it's a big mainstay of the UK and one of our biggest companies. And there was a senior executive that I was filming with one day, and they must have about, what do you reckon, Sarah? They must have at least 200 or 300 stores in the UK, I would have thought. And there was, and in most of those stores, there is a restaurant or a cafe and that produces hot food. And this executive was in charge of every single restaurant and every single cafe in the whole of the UK. And in fact, the world, they do have Marks and Spencer's in other parts of the world. I think they've got them in China and other places now.
Yeah, no, they're massive,
he had the responsibility of saying one sentence for this film, because it was all about showing off to the staff that would be working in these restaurants and in these cafes what an amazing place Marks and Spencer's was to work. That was the basic message of the film. And he had to say a sentence along the lines of, we're really proud that our new hot food on the move brand will be opening in Marks and Spencer stores across the country soon. It was something like that. It was very, very simple, one sentence thing. We had half an hour scheduled in the day's schedule to do this sentence, and I thought that would be plenty of time. I'm actually, sometimes one of my faults is that I don't schedule enough time for things, and you're sort of traveling and things like that. But I was pretty careful when making the shooting schedule to make sure we had everything in. An hour later, we were still there on take, I would say, 55 or something, and he just stumbled every single time on the sort of the first, second, third word. He would sort of start the sentence and then just go, sorry, and then start again, and then sort of get through a couple of words, and then sort of would just forget what it was. And this is a guy who I'm sure has to present to board meetings on a regular basis. I'm sure, has made many presentations to sort of small amounts of people as well as large. Sometimes small amounts of people can be more nerve-wracking because you have to look at them right in the eye. But when we put a camera in front of him, he just absolutely went to pieces. And once he'd started messing it up, he just couldn't get it back together. And because the time was slightly against us, I think that also added to the pressure of it. And in the end, we did get, I think, 1 or 2 takes of him saying this full sentence all the way through. But I think that was the worst example of anyone I've ever worked with. And there's been a few bad ones, but I think that was the worst one. We were all tearing our hair out by the end of it. But I tried to stay calm and be enthusiastic, but it was pretty, to try and help him, but it was pretty tough towards the end.
It's amazing. I don't know what actually happens. The camera, it's almost like, I don't know what it is that happens when we put people in front of a camera. I remember I was with a group of entrepreneurs, and we were meant to film, like, I'm literally like a 1 minute video clip, right? And one of the guys was like, I did 101 little, it's not actually a minute, like 100 something takes. But if you have a general conversation with him, he's the most conversant person that you can have a conversation with. Yeah. But just standing in front of the camera, that was it.
Yeah.
He's just couldn't get a sentence out. What is it? What do you think it is that, so that this can help our listeners kind of just overcome that whole camera, it's a phobia, it's a fear in terms of the relationship with the camera?
Yeah, I just think that it's a very, very unnatural thing to speak naturally into an inanimate object. And there's three things that are going to help you achieve a more natural performance. And they are preparation, and can you guess the third one?
Preparation.
Yeah. I think what especially as there's so many cameras around now, everybody has a smartphone that has a video capability, and you know the younger generation now sort of have a saying that if it's not on YouTube, it doesn't exist. You know, so everything is getting filmed. But interestingly, if you actually are filming someone and they're doing something, you know, sort of silly or something that would make a sort of amusing YouTube clip, but then you actually ask them to talk about what they were doing straight down the barrel of the lens, again, they can't do it. I mean, I used to sort of work quite a lot with people out on the street with presenters, and you see it quite a lot on the news, especially on live news channels, where there's some sort of idiot in the background, you know, waving his arms around or saying, so, okay, come and film me. And then occasionally we'll go, all right, we will film you. What do you think about this? And then we'll go, I don't know. So, and that's because they weren't prepared for that scenario. And it just is a really sort of uncomfortable situation that every single presenter has just overcome through years of practice. And the thing to do, if you are ever in a position where you're going to be interviewed for a television program or a radio program, is just, if you can beforehand, sit down with someone else and ask them to interview you in this, hopefully kind of in the style of how that radio show or that TV show will be, and record it and watch it back and see how you performed, get someone to give you some feedback on how you performed, and then do it again. If you've got time, do it again. And in that way, when you come to the real thing, you'll find that you have some sort of messages, you have some sentences kind of pre-programmed in your brain that you're used to performing in that environment, and it's not unnatural to you. And that will make life so much easier. And that's just the thing that everybody sort of completely underestimates, particularly when I was working in the corporate world, making corporate films. Going back to the example of the guy who was the hot food chief at M&S, you know, they just sort of really underestimate how it is going to be in front of a camera in particular. And also it's not just being in front of a camera. A microphone is just as bad and even sort of more dangerous in a way, because you think just because it's a microphone, you're not being filmed. It's a bit more casual. Sometimes, you know, people can just let slip things that they didn't really mean to say because they're kind of in a nervous situation, and they can just ramble on for too long and just say that extra little sentence, and that can be a problem. And being with a newspaper journalist or a blogger or something like that, again, you know, that's get even worse potentially.
So would you say then basically don't say what you wouldn't write? Yeah. So you know, sometimes when we're talking, we just let our mouth run away with us.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I was to be writing an email to you or to anybody else or writing on a blog, there are certain things that I wouldn't write.
Exactly. Now, again, in media training, we've got a we've got a sort of saying that you don't want to say anything you wouldn't want to see in the newspapers the next day. So that's what you've got to keep in your mind.
Okay. And I think this is kind of brings us very well into one of the points that I wanted us to cover is like the journalist is not your friend.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And it's almost like, what can you share on this, and sort of giving us examples from your wealth of experience of the people that you've met who obviously fell for this badly?
Yeah. Well, I've got a few examples really where some people that I know worked with a charity, and they had the patron of that charity was Cherie Blair. Do you know Tony Blair's wife, who's the lawyer? Yeah. And she had it was a charity to help out with AIDS in Africa. Fantastic cause. And the journalist came down. It was going to be it was a big interview all about the charity. The interview went on for about an hour. It was fantastic. They didn't ask her anything about the usual things that you might want to ask Cherie Blair about, because that was the sort of the context of the interview. And it was great. It's going to be big sort of couple of page spread in the Evening Standard, which they were really delighted with. Yes. Then they all caught a cab after that, the journalist, Cherie Blair, and my friend who was working on the thing. And the interview's over, you would think. So they started making small talk in the taxi. And Cherie Blair said the words, Tony still thrills me. And guess what the headline was in the next day's Evening Standard? Cherie, Tony still thrills me. Cherie Blair reveals that their marriage is still alive and kicking. There was hardly a mention of this charity at all. And they sort of had this whole sort of big piece about how, the sort of basically, how their marriage was still sort of exciting for both of them and things like that. And and he felt very betrayed by this journalist because, but that's a kind of rookie mistake that that people make. I mean, they sort of, at the moment you encounter the journalist, the moment you shake hands with them, until the moment they have left the same building as you, the interview is not over. So you've got to be very, very careful about what you say, and sometimes the journalist is not your friend, even when they are your friend. And I've got another little story if we've got time, even though they're your friend. Yeah, because
wary of you.
There's a friend of mine who was a journalist for the Sunday Times. Yeah. And she used to work with a guy called Jim Watson, who you may know was one of the two people that discovered DNA back in the or sequenced DNA back in the 50s. I'm not quite sure what the scientific term is for it, but he subsequently, gone on to be this huge sort of star of science, of chemistry. And he was incredibly well funded in America, and built up this research center in New England, where when my friend was a student, she managed to get an internship working there in the summer. And she then went to finish university and gradually became a journalist writing about science, and was sent back because of this personal connection to get an exclusive interview from this guy, Jim Watson. Yeah. And they talked about his research again for many hours, and where he was going and what he was looking forward to doing. And a lot of it, was fascinating work in this sort of DNA kind of sphere and genetics and all that sort of thing. But then again, he let slip just in casual conversation, but unfortunately it was recorded on her dictaphone, that he believed that black people were didn't have the same mental capabilities, genetically speaking, as white people, and so they would never achieve the same things. And unbelievable, right?
Wide open. What?
Yeah. And he said that as a sort